Hello, hello. You are listening to the Cinderblock podcast. My name is Nick. Thank you for joining me. As always, I will say, if you are not familiar with Cinderblock Sessions, we film music with cameras for the internet, and that's what we do. Check it out at cinderblocksessions.com, at CNDBLK Sessions on Twitter, at Cinderblock Sessions on Instagram, Cinderblock Sessions on Facebook. We're all over the place, trying to promote local music in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My guest this week is a man by the name of Charley Crockett. Dude, Charley is super cool, man. I'd only met him once before we sat down to kind of talk about music and life and philosophy. And Charley, for a 30-year-old guy, has had a lot of really cool life experience that I was super jealous of. And I'll be honest, I developed, I think, kind of like a man crush maybe on him as he was talking, just because he was blowing my mind with all these really cool stories about traveling the country and traveling the world, just playing music anywhere and any way he could to kind of get by and to get his art out there. And it was really impressive and really, I think it's something that anyone who's an artist, you can reach a certain age and continue to pursue that passion with the same fervor that you did when you were younger. And as somebody who's right in the middle of that, I'm 26 years old, it was really kind of inspiring because I never want to stop making my art and continuing to try to put things out there that matter to myself and that matter to people. So it was awesome. Big news, upcoming stuff. Dude, we're here. Cinderblock Sessions Season 2 is this Saturday, 8 p.m. Charley Crockett will be playing in studio with us, and you can be there. You know, Charley and I had a blast just kind of hanging out and talking about life and music and the places he's been, man. He's got some stories. So check it out. This is the interview with Charley Crockett, who's playing March 26th at Cinderblock Sessions. Here it is. First of all, so Charley Crockett, welcome.
Appreciate you having me here, man.
Thanks, man. You've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah? Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about where you started and how you came up doing music.
All right, yeah. When it comes to playing, I started doing that about right in between around 16, 17.
Yeah.
In New Orleans, playing music on the street. Not as much playing as more learning how to be on the street,
right.
Hanging out with the guys that were playing, and then slowly picking up songs off of them, in the French Quarter, and then I would be in Texas, would be doing that in Deep Ellum,
sure.
And that whole thing.
So, but you're from here, right?
I'm from the Rio Grande Valley. I'm from South Texas.
Yeah.
So I lived down there when I was a kid, and we come up. Me and my mama would come up to Dallas when I was in middle school, and and I split time between living with her and living with my uncle down, and she wanted me to get that fatherly figure in there. So I spent time with my uncle in New Orleans.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. So I would kind of split the deal and be kind of in and out of school and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was guitar your first instrument? Is that how you got started?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I always say that my first instrument was my voice. So I started singing when I was young, and
nice.
Not trained or anything, but I would sing with my mama. She was into blues and gospel and good rock and roll and old time music, big band swing, that kind of stuff. And nice. So I was always she sang and that made me comfortable singing because she was singing. So I started doing that really young.
Yeah.
But I started playing guitar around 17. Yeah.
So what was that like? Did you have like a core group in New Orleans your boys that would just like go out and be rowdy and sing songs and do all that kind of stuff? Or
well,
like,
it really kind of started with New Orleans. I was like hitchhiking into town, and I was coming back from someplace and coming back into New Orleans, and it was the middle of the summer in the quarter. In the middle of the summer, there's nobody around. It's so hot. It's like a ghost town. Mm. So on Royal Street, when it's usually on and popping, in the fall, and that lasts all the way through Jazz Fest, like the first week of May.
Yeah.
Then that heat and that intolerable humidity comes through, and it's a ghost town.
Right.
But I rode into town this one summer right in the middle of that heat, and the dude that's playing trumpet on my records. His name is Charles Mills Jr. And we met by chance, years and years ago on the street with nobody else out there. And we kind of became running mates, and everything that I would do in New Orleans would kind of be based off of he and I started as a duo.
Cool.
And then we built up a band on the street and stuff. And then I'd be, in and out of town with different, drifting musicians, train car kids, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's the next thing I wanted to talk about was, because it sounds like you've traveled a lot, especially because you talked to me about kind of the travel culture of New Orleans, right? Hopping on a train. Tell me about that. I mean.
Yeah. Well, we would do, different ways. A lot of people, when it comes to riding trains, I've ridden on trains quite a few times, but not nearly as much as the deeper culture. I would do a lot of hitchhiking. That was easier for me. A lot of people that I knew, it was easy for us to hitchhike because I always kept a classic look. Even when I didn't have money, I'd have like the one old school outfit, and I'd stick with that.
Nice.
And try to keep myself, as clean as I could, and because that helps you get tips when you're playing on the street, and also people are gonna let you stay with them more if your hygiene is at least apparently kept up.
Yeah.
And so I used to date a fiddle player down in New Orleans. This girl, Jessica Hester, and she was from the middle of nowhere, Missouri, but we met down there, and actually she was living in a tent in the Central Park there, or in the Central Business District of New Orleans during like the Occupy Wall Street movement.
Okay, wow.
And she was somebody that really taught me how to really hitchhike and ride trains with different people. Like, I would ride with guys that really knew what they were doing, because riding on freight can be really tricky,
Yeah.
It really can be. So
that's crazy.
I let people do the heavy lifting there, And
Sure.
then I would ride a lot of times too with other musicians, from up to New York and out to California and back and forth and stuff. And the trains, I predominantly rode around the South, but there was a time that I rode from New York, all the way across the Midwest. And
man,
yeah, man, it was cool.
Sounds like some fun times.
Yeah,
that's life experience that few people have, right? I mean,
I guess so. It's definitely it's an underground culture, but actually, in the last decade or so, I would say that culture has come back.
Really?
Yeah, I would attribute it to growing trouble and discourse among, the middle class of America. Sure. I think there's a lot of decaying. I think there's a lot of transition from people who used to be in the middle class moving more towards poverty. Mm-hmm. And in that poverty, and in the millennial generation, there's a lot of young people giving up on that decaying lifestyle and trading it in for drifting, for the hobo life, which is a really great opportunity, is an attractive opportunity compared to the decay of like family structure in America and stuff, with a lot of people are struggling today. This is a different era, So I think that Depression era that we were dealing, that Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly came out of, I think we're seeing a return of that culture, that subculture in America.
Yeah. That's a really cool perspective.
And that's what I've seen, in my 10, 12 years of traveling around the country, is I've noticed this growing kind of not untaught, it's this growing culture that's not talked too much about. You don't hear about it, but it's a lot larger than it seems like, and a lot of that's where a lot of the renewed interest in old spiritual traditional music, kind of roots music, is coming from, is a lot of the traveling culture, a lot of the American kind of gypsy floating culture, which I got swept up in,
Right.
Yeah.
That's something that I know that I'm guilty of, is not thinking about a lot, because I hear you hear music trends and stuff like that, but I'm often guilty of not thinking about where they come from.
Right.
The kind of.
Well, I wouldn't say you're guilty of anything. It's just you're doing your thing. We all have our different like, niche.
Sure.
And so, yeah. So like, because what you do is this whole thing that I could, like, with film and audio and and the different things that you guys are doing. Sure. I'm kind of naive to. If we were to switch places, I'd be just as lost over there as you would be trying to get on a train.
That's true. I would be so lost on a train. But okay, so where in this timeline do you go to New York?
So I started. New Orleans was the first round was years ago. When I was a teenager, and then that grew because from like you were asking me about before, New Orleans has such a travel culture. It was really from New Orleans that I was able to catch rides out to the West Coast, and then what's a little more regularly available is riding back and forth either on trains or hitchhiking with people, or hitchhiking the highway up to New York by way of like the Asheville, North Carolina thing.
Yeah.
So we would get rides up there, and then that's another really cool town for street performance and travel life, roots music. It's very organic. It's a small town feel in the mountains.
Sure.
So that would be kind of a halfway point and start staying up there, and then from Asheville you'd connect with rides that could get you up to New York.
Cool.
So where in the timeline that was, I guess, I'm 30 now. That was like I think it was like 23 or so when I first started playing in New York City, when I first showed up there. And similar to New Orleans, I wasn't a club player. I wasn't playing theaters. I didn't have money to do the pay to play type of game that was available to most people like in this era.
Sure.
So I gravitated naturally by necessity to playing in parks, playing on the street. But it's illegal to play above ground in New York City, and they actually regulate it pretty good.
Really?
In terms of like on city streets. Like say if you're on the Lower East Side and you're trying to play on a street corner above ground, cops are all over it.
Oh man.
But so that kind of drove me underground, whereas underground, and I guess it's changing more now, but for those formative years for me, they were really tolerant of us playing on the subway.
Yeah.
On the platforms.
Sure.
And really where I started really developing more rapidly was when I was playing on the platform, because I found this place that wasn't making a lot of money, but if I played for 2 hours and made $10, $15, I looked at that as I'm getting paid $10 or $15 to practice. I'm getting $10 or $15 to work this song out. I'm getting $10 or $15 to, express myself.
Sure.
And so
that's awesome.
I did that for quite a while. And while I'd be doing that, during the day and whenever I could, and then I would be hitting open mics and blues jams around the city at the different places that I could, throughout the week when those were available, and that led to more opportunities in different cities. Like I met a guy named Benjamin Agerbach. He's a jazz singer from Copenhagen, over in Northern Europe.
Yeah.
And we developed a friendship, and eventually he invited me over to Europe, and knowing my circumstances, bought me a ticket over there and gave me a place to stay. And even though I was a really rough around the edges type of player, kind of gave me my first opportunity to like see outside of America. And then I traveled around, throughout Europe, and ended up down in North Africa and stuff by just drifting through and living in the street culture of both, say in Denmark. And then when it got colder, I'd moved down towards Germany, and then I wound up living in Paris, France, which still to this day is my favorite place to be if you're a struggling, starving artist trying to pursue your art. I beg you, if you can, go to Paris. It's the place to be if you're broke.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, that's cool.
They're so tolerant, and if you're broke and you're starving and you're only making a couple of dollars, the street food in Paris will keep you alive a lot longer than it will in New York City or New Orleans. I'm telling you that right now.
So you went to New York for a while, and then traveled. Let's for lack of a better term, the world. I'm sure there's a better term, but how long were you overseas?
I've only been over so far. Things are changing. Supposed to be going over there in the fall.
Nice.
But that was a full year over there. I was maybe a year and some change. So I was only in Denmark for 6 to 8 weeks, but I wore out my welcome pretty quickly and ran out of money. Like I said, I really was really a rough player at the time. Not that I still am a rough player, but by comparison back then, it was, the money that I was able to make that my friend had set me up for in Copenhagen was generous compared to where I was professionally at the time. And so when I wore out my welcome, I took the last money that I had left and bought a bus fare to Paris, France, that I knew nothing about.
Man.
And so I took that after those 6 or 8 weeks. So I went to Paris And then I lived in Paris on the street for around 6 months.
Man.
And then through playing on the street, I would play at like different homeless shelters, and not because I was, into that, but those were the people who were receptive to what I was doing. So I would play for different homeless shelters around Paris, and I played at some small theaters that there was a theater called, it's called Le Petit Théâtre du Bonheur, which means Little Theater of Happiness.
Nice.
And I ended up living there. Actually slept under the stage at that place and began filling in for acts when they would be out of town on the weekends. And then eventually I was able to get a regular residency there. And through that, I ended up meeting somebody from Guinea in West Africa near the Ivory Coast and stuff. Yeah. And I had always wanted to go connect with the culture of Africa. And when I got that opportunity, I took it. But it didn't, like everything else ever, it's like it never goes as planned. So
sure.
I wanted to end up in Guinea, but with my friend who I met that offered me to go down there, but because of some difficulties with American relations with a couple of the countries that you need transit visas to transfer down from, like Morocco is the first country you get to if you take the ferry over from Spain.
Yeah.
I wound up getting stuck in Morocco and not being able to go any further into Africa, and I had stayed a lot longer in France than you're allowed to by your visa.
Oh,
so really? I couldn't go back. So I wound up living in Africa, or in Morocco in the mountains for about 6 months.
Man.
And it was really cool. I mean, it was really cool. And it was funny. I had no money, but I ended up being healthier and having a clearer mind than I ever had in my life. Living in, by Western standards, very poor country, but the culture was really amazing and special for me, and it was a good thing. So that rounded out about a year of travel. So in terms of traveling the world, have I been that far compared to a lot of people? No, but I did Europe and Northern Africa, but I would love to spend a lot longer in Africa, and I would love to go all over it, and I'd rather be there with nothing and find out what it's really about than have a bunch of money and stay in an ivory tower.
Sure. I mean, well, and you just talk about a wealth of life experiences. For me, you said you're 30 years old?
Yeah.
I mean, that's more than I think a lot of 30-year-olds can boast about their life as far as traveling their own country around the United States and playing and in such a unique fashion. I'm sure there are plenty of people that, maybe their families have money and they were able to go on vacations and fly to this city or this city, but you've jumped from city to city, either hitchhiking or on a train. It's really cool. And then going into other countries and being able to live, A, just as a young person, and B, as a musician trying, an artist, trying to just perfect your craft. It's just super cool. I mean, I'm 26 and I've been nowhere, and I'm super jealous of you right now.
Oh man, well, you got time, you could do it.
I know, man.
What I could tell you to do is go do it when you the way to be able to travel around America, wherever, 'cause not everybody can, jump over to, other countries in the world. Although I believe that if you want that, it can materialize for you no matter what your economic situation is. It's just the power. It's the power of desire.
Right.
But I would urge you to take those risks in your 20s, because it's much easier to sleep on floors without money and skip meals when you're 26 than it is if you were 36.
Sure.
I'm really glad that the things that I did around America and on the road and sleeping outside and in parks and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad that happened to me in my 20s, because I don't know if I got the same capacity for that I did then.
Sure.
You know what
right?
I mean?
Well,
I was a lot more limber.
Right. Yeah.
The alcohol didn't affect me the same way either.
Oh man. It gets worse every day, right?
It does. I hate to admit it, but
I know. So I know that you at one time had a contract with Sony. Is that correct? When did that happen?
Well, so the Sony thing, what it really is actually the contract that I had was actually with Boss Sounds, which is more like a boutique management company.
Gotcha.
But those people were deeply tied into Sony and different companies like that.
Yeah.
The music business has changed a lot. It's fragmented where there's lots of people from the old model that due to technology, social media, it's really changed where there are a lot of boutique groups that can develop artists and then bring them into the larger umbrella music companies like Sony or Universal. And so we were discovered by Nell, who's definitely a heavyweight in the music industry associated with Sony and other people like that.
Yeah.
And I was actually discovered in the subway cars.
That's so cool.
So before I went to Europe, I was only playing on the platforms.
Mm-hmm.
When I got back from Europe, and this is kind of interesting, especially between Europe and Africa, it's wild. You would think that when I went to Africa, I would have deep culture shock.
Right.
But I didn't really, because I was already living on the street. And even if it's a Western country, if you're living in Germany where everybody speaks English, it's a lot more like being in America. But if you go to a country like France or Spain or any of the Eastern European countries where English is not commonly spoken,
right,
it's a lot more difficult for you. And that's the thing about Paris or France I could tell you is I was just drawn to it. My mother always loved France and thought about it as the greatest, as this really beautiful country.
Cool.
And so I was drawn to it for that reason. And when I got there, I realized that it was going to be way more difficult than Denmark had been, or even just a few days that I had spent in Germany. Yeah. Everybody under 35 spoke English. But in France, even if they spoke English well, they weren't trying to speak English to Americans.
Sure.
Americans definitely have a bad reputation in those places.
Yeah.
And so that put me in a position where I had to rely even more on making music and being resourceful on an everyday level on the street, with sleeping in parks and coming up with money and, being able to interact and get around the city without really with a language barrier.
Sure.
So that when I went to Africa was easier in a way because I ended up being out in the country. It was in the rural areas. I was living with people on farms where they were growing food, and you're not constantly having to spend money at every second. You got to get on a subway car. Even if you want a crepe on the street in Paris, you got to have money for that.
Right.
Even if you want a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Bottle of wine, even if it's only, $1 or $2, you got to have that. In Africa and a lot of places I've lived in my life, including throughout the United States, like the farm life, living in rural areas was the place that I could get healthy and heal and survive much easier without money. And so those things, that really prepared me for that rural life. And so when I came back to Brooklyn, because I flew back after a year I flew from Paris back to Brooklyn.
Okay.
And when I landed back in Brooklyn, after living in, France for 6 months and then in Africa for 6 months, when I got to Brooklyn, I had the heaviest culture shock I ever experienced in my life.
Really?
Because all these things that I saw a certain way were no longer those places. I saw a lot of things seemed a lot more plastic and shallow to me. A lot of things that I thought were cool were no longer cool to me.
Yeah.
Things that seemed like they had depth seemed more shallow. And so it created it was a culture shock. And I think because I was having that culture shock, I was playing on the subway and I wound up being receptive to forces that drew me into the train that I wouldn't have been receptive to before I left the country. Because
interesting, playing
in the subway car is this really wild thing, and what happened was this dude who's doing really well himself independently. We haven't talked in a long time, but this guy Jadon Woodard is his name.
Okay.
And he started out as a spoken word poet, and he's moved into a freestyle hip hop artist, rapper who has some accolades now. Like he was in XXL magazine last month. This kid has been rocking and winning freestyle competitions from way back before even I met him.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was rapping in the trains with a guitar player back in the day when I was on the subway when I had come back from Europe, and I'd be playing on the subway and this dude would get off the train car and he'd have this like crazy long haired dude with him with a guitar, and I didn't really realize what they were doing, but he would come over, he'd get off the train, he'd come over to where I was playing on the platform on the G train on the Metropolitan stop in Brooklyn, and whatever, I'd be playing on the train and he'd show up, he'd start rapping over my guitar stuff.
Yeah.
you know, and all that deal, you know, and I grew up freestyling and you know, ciphering all the different stuff in the neighborhoods that I grew up in and stuff like that. So I was really accustomed to that, and I liked and always drawn to that kind of stuff. So he would do that, and he did that a few different days. And then after doing that a few different days, he started trying to invite me to come and do what I was doing, playing my guitar and singing. You know, he wanted me to start doing that with him on the train.
Gotcha.
And I was actually apprehensive because I didn't really understand what he was doing. And I'm like, man, getting a train car? I don't know. You know, but forces pulled us together, and we ran into each other a few days later, and he convinced me to go on the train with him. And the rest was history. I was just hooked on it because you had this captive audience out of nowhere. The door, you walk into the subway car off the platform, the doors close, and you got those people.
Right.
You know, until the next stop. You know, and if it's not too busy, you know, the acoustics are perfect, and you can fill everybody up. And he and I started doing that as a duo at first. And it was fire. And all of a sudden, I was making 5 times more money than I had ever made on the platform.
Yeah.
And fast. And people were wanting to know who we were, you know. And I wasn't even very good at social media because smartphones were just becoming this thing. It's like when we were doing it, it was like people were just moving from flip phones, you know, and like kind of standard old school cell phones into, you know, the smart device with the screen that had a faster service.
Yeah.
And so over the, you know, we were in that transition period where that was just becoming big, and that taught me a lot of things about social media, about making money, about the panhandling or soliciting that we were doing. It taught me many things, just like hustling the streets of New Orleans in front of Cafe Du Monde or out in front of Rouse's on Royal. You know, it really taught me how to sell myself to the crowd. You know, you got to ask for the money. You know, you got to be the word's not aggressive, but you got to be proactive.
Sure.
You know,
Okay.
and nothing prepared me for that, like hustling with tourists in New Orleans, and then also learning how to work with people on the subway cars in New York, because when the doors close, you know, these people are on their way to or from something. They've been working all day. They got all this heavy emotions, all this different stuff. They don't want to hear nothing, you know. So
Right.
it's not easy to win them over. It takes it takes real work, you know. And then when you're passing the hat and trying to collect money from them, you know, it takes it takes character, it takes charisma, and all those kind of things. But to make a long story short, I ended up tied up for a couple of years in playing on the train cars every single day.
Yeah.
It's such a addictive. That's not the word. It's such an exhilarating feeling to be able to play for 2 minutes to a captive subway car that's moving for 2 minutes. You know, every stop, and then you collect the money and learn how to get good at that. Sing your little 2-minute song. You know, Charlie Parker style, the way that he used to do that stuff up in Brooklyn when nobody knew who he was. They would sing like one song a minute, these little clubs for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, you do 60 songs in an hour, and then you'd move on, and all those people would be rushed out of the club, and then new people would come in there, and you have to, you know, do another 60, you'd have to do 60, you know, another 60 songs in an hour, you know, and it was all about getting them to drink, you know, and then they would get their cut. It's real similar. That's real similar to what we're doing the train. You know, a minute and a half to 2.5 minutes between the stops that we would learn that worked real good, you know, on the G train or the J or the R train or the 6 train in Manhattan that we called the penthouses. You know, that was where you could score them $20 bills.
Oh.
But you learned to craft your songs to be the length between the stops, and you needed to make sure that you had enough time to tell them who you were and collect the money. And then when the doors open, move to the next train car, you know, and do your stuff. And those were invaluable lessons.
Yeah.
And to me and Jay Don and the guys that were running with us, those were the only opportunities for a real audience to perform for that we had, because we couldn't get into the venues that weren't really paying. It was almost pay to play. And there's nothing negative about that, but we didn't have access to that. We had no gear. We didn't have the, you know, rehearsal space. We couldn't really form bands. We just couldn't support that.
Right.
So we found our way of sharpening our skills, you know, performing for the public in the public platform, which was, you know, the transit system. And anyway, we did that for a couple of years, and that would generate crazy opportunities, man. We played Brooklyn Bowl in New York. We played Terminal 5. We did a lot of really cool stuff. We would play backyard house parties for people and get paid money that we never thought we could get paid before, all because we started like handing out flyers with our name. We were called Train Robbers. Nice. It was just a clever name for playing on the subway cars. But when we ended up getting signed and discovered on the R train in Manhattan below Broadway around 28th Street, which was where our manager who signed us at that time was working, when we were discovered, we ended up kind of being stuck to that name, Train Robbers, and moving into this much more commercial pop oriented type of thing that was we were both not really ready for because we were so raw at the time, and also the pace of everything was really fast for us. But yeah, we signed a 2-year contract, and everything kind of folded under the pressure of street guys trying to quickly convert into commercial artists,
right?
Literally overnight, and being young and being inexperienced, that fell apart for us,
Sure.
But it was a hell of an experience.
Man, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
You just sold it to me.
I hope I did. I feel
like
I'm still not good at saying it. I've been telling people about this for 3 years, and I'm still not very good at it. But that's how it went down.
Dude, that was compelling.
Cool.
Like, I was sitting here just... You had me. You had me hooked.
I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, dude.
The cool thing is there's video footage, man. It's not.
Oh, really?
It's all street type stuff. This dude Shelby Hemstock we used to squat all over like the different neighborhood. Bushwick has been the artist neighborhood that blew up in the industrial areas out past Williamsburg, which has become unaffordable for vagabond artists and musicians and even people on your side of it, of the business.
Sure. Okay, well let's move forward a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, that's all back quite a ways.
That is, but that's so awesome. I love hearing about that stuff. Now I want to talk about Charley Crockett being here today. What are you doing now? How did you get to be this? I mean, you're a guy now in like Dallas, right? Like
I don't know. I guess I am here physically in
you
Dallas
are you
right now.
yeah. But like you've been didn't you win a DOMA this year, or were you nominated?
I won. Yeah, I got lucky.
Won.
I don't know how the hell that happened, but yeah.
So there's some accolades. There's some. I don't want to say hype because hype is.
Well, hey, you know what, man? It
up.
is all hype, but
Okay.
you hope that sometime the hype is real.
Right. So how did you? Once you came back to Texas, what's it been like here? What's been going on for you?
Well, so the thing is, it's like, well, that's good. Why'd I come back to Texas? So, when we got tied up in the record deal, a friend of mine, Clarence Greenwood, I remember, he goes by Citizen Cope.
Okay.
But his real name's Clarence Greenwood. He's this dude who's been around a long time. And I remember, he was like, man, you signed that contract, it's gonna break you up. It's gonna break your band up, Basically being like, I don't know if you guys are ready for that. Chill out. Let's go a different route. But I was young and starving on the street, desperate, and, made that quick decision. It was great to learn all that stuff. But once that fell out, I had 2 years to sit and think about it because I had to wait that contract out.
Right.
And the way that I waited that contract out was plugging into the people that I knew in California who I'd been hitchhiking out and staying with over the years, and was a big part of where I've been developing my music, because people out there were really appreciative and supportive of young artists, musicians, and people, developing and stuff. So I went back out there to kind of heal from the experience because I had been grinding on the street for so long, both there and in Europe and in New Orleans in Texas for a long time before that.
Right.
So I went out to the hill and wait it out. And ultimately the product of that was my last record that did have, some kind of success here in Dallas last year, A Stolen Jewel. And I wound up recording that record out there, waited out the 2 years, and then after the 2 years passed by, and the next year made that record. Produced it myself, manufactured it myself, printed up 5,000 copies. And just like you heard about back in the day, I drove that music down from California in this old truck down to Texas, and having roots in Dallas, and seeing actually also that Dallas has moved into a unique new kind of town on the rise. I feel like for entertainment, for really a lot of people. Things have changed in America a lot. In Dallas, the South in general is experiencing a revival that we haven't seen in a long time.
I agree with that.
And Dallas is one of those towns. I mean, there's a lot of rising with Leon Bridges and Kayla Sinclair and many things, many artists beyond that, many things going on here in our art scene shows signs of a lot of opportunity here. And I recognize that coming through town. So I printed up 5,000 copies of A Stolen Jewel and brought it down here and just did what I've always done streetwise, which is just start get it in people's hands, grassroots, moving the record, play anywhere I could, make a habit of saying yes till I could afford to say no, which I haven't reached that point yet. Who knows if I will.
Right.
And, with some luck, with God's grace, faith in my spirituality and really white hot desire, pushing that stuff up, doors started to open and opportunities started coming, and a lot of the visions that I had for myself started becoming a reality, and a lot, and the hard work and the grinding and the shadows of those years and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden we're all starting to seem like they're paying off, making sense to me and coming in handy, and that's kind of what it was. It's, that belief that I learned from the street is like, you put your art out in front of people there, and it's just, truly word of mouth. Like, and that's what I liked about the Subway. It's like, man, who's gonna, I can't afford to get into a venue anyway, right? But and if I could, even if I got 100 unique people to fill up that venue 30 days a month, that's 3,000 people, right? Yeah. But I can reach 3,000 people on the Subway in a few hours.
Right.
And that was a big realization for me. And so that taught me a lot about promotion, and marketing. And the thing is, it's like, if you don't know your image and you're out there going forward, the people who come at you are going to shape your image a lot more than you do, because you don't know what you want. So the street struggle, the record label, that falling out, having to go on the sabbatical and wait the contract out, gave me time to reflect and decide on, well, what is Charley Crockett? Who is Charley Crockett? What am I saying to people, and what do I mean when I tell them I'm Charley Crockett and this image I have in that brand, and that gave me time to figure out who that was. And then once I'm comfortable with that image, then I myself can sell it, because you're either selling your image for yourself or you're waiting for somebody to find you that's going to sell their version of your image.
Right.
That's America. You know what I'm saying? It really is. And I've just, stumbled through the dark and ended up here at my age in an opportunity where I'm able to shape that for myself more than I think a lot of young artists are able to.
Yeah.
Only because I, kind of gone through a lot of stuff and made it here to my age, and I'm doing it. And so, I've been able to confidently go through and put out a product that I made myself. And because I made it myself and believed in it, then I'm really able to convince others that they should believe in it too, because I'm so satisfied with my own product.
Sure.
And I'm just doing the same thing again now, this year, like we're doing the Cinderblock Sessions, and I'm going on tour starting in Memphis tomorrow, up to New York City, and back down to Austin for South by Southwest.
Nice.
Part of the fuel that I have for doing that, and all the, the generous, opportunities and write-ups that I got from, last year in this town, and are considering coming through now, and even like you guys giving me the opportunity that you are, which I am really grateful for. I'm really excited to play Cinderblock. When I saw Kirk play this last year at American Beauty Meal, man, it was so captivating. It was a romantic thing for me. It was beautiful. The energy was high, and I felt like it was special. And when you guys came to ask me to do this, I felt really lucky, because I know there's a lot of rising talent, in this town, more than most towns. And because of all of that momentum, I've been able to work up another album, in the night, which is fully recorded, that I'm, hoping to release this spring, and I'm already getting ready to, leak couple of the songs and get some feelers out there and stuff. And that's where we are right now.
Yeah, man.
Playing at the High Tone in Memphis tomorrow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Good luck. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if you need luck to go on tour, but,
Hey, man, I do need luck, and I believe that, I love the statement, I'd rather be lucky than good, because the reality is no matter how good you are, if you are going up against somebody who has amazing luck, you can't outdo that person.
Yeah.
But good luck comes from following the real, passion that's in your heart, listening to that. And that's what makes a person lucky, because you got desire, you have preparation, you have timing, and all those things come together. And that's really what makes somebody lucky. So I love it when you say good luck.
All right. Well, then good luck to you, man.
Hell yeah.
And, we're super pumped to have you come play Cinderblock, which I'm going to tell the people that Charley is the first artist that we're having for season 2 of Cinderblock Sessions, March
Praise
26th.
Yeah.
Yeah. March 26th. It's going to be awesome at our new space that we've been working on for the last 3 months.
Man. Yeah,
thank you.
I'm so excited to be able to play here with you.
Dude, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
People are gonna have a good time hanging out at this spot, man. You got room. It's warm. I love it.
And you're bringing an opener.
Yeah, Vincent Neil Emerson.
Yes.
Which is and is another boy on the rise. You know, he's got that rags to riches twinkle in his eye.
Yeah.
Boy can play.
Yeah, we're pumped about that, man. So the last thing I want to cover, and you kind of just talked about it, is what you got. What's next, right? So you're going on tour. You're playing Cinderblock at the end of the month with us. What's happening next for Charley Crockett?
Well, what's happening next is that I can promise is that I'm going to keep putting out records.
Great.
Because
we're happy to hear that.
Yeah, that's what I believe in. You know, I think people can go through all these different things in their career and all these ups and downs. At the end of it, you're going to be left with the catalog that you have created. Mm-hmm. And so my number one passion in this business is to be about recording the music. So what's next for me really is I want to be able to get the new record In the Night out there because I believe in it. It's the best work that I've done to this point. It's everything I learned from A Stolen Jewel and then all the 200 gigs that I hustled up between last year and this year. You know, it's all the stuff, blood, sweat, and tears to come into a new out record. I'm looking to expand. I want to go back to Europe. Nice. I'm scheduled to be back there in the fall. I want to continue to play intimate theaters in America where people listen. That's what I'm hoping is in the future for me is to be able to play more rooms like the Kessler Theater here in Dallas. Mm-hmm. I'm playing at the Granada Theater with Tab Benoit, who, like myself, he's got Cajun roots and just a really great blues Americana player. I'm excited to be playing with him at the Granada just a couple of days before our show.
Really?
Yeah, on my birthday. On March 24th, my birthday, I'm opening up for this blues hero of mine. I'm really excited.
That's awesome, man.
With my full band, the Blue Drifters.
Cool.
So that's in
I'm
the
going to try to make it out to that.
Very near future.
Yeah.
Well, holler at me, man. I got a few spots, man. I can get you on there. We're doing an interview. Well. So that'd be cool.
Cool.
It'd be fun.
Excellent.
And then what else past that I can say? I hope to have a farm raising, more chickens and stuff with my lady sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because I love the road, but it's nice to have a little farm to come back to.
Sure.
Yeah,
cool, man.
Yeah.
I got two more quick questions for you.
Yeah, man.
And then we'll wrap it up and I'll let you go.
Dopest.
One's about the medallion that you're wearing.
Oh, cool, man.
Is there any meaning behind it, or is it just a cool medallion you like?
Oh, man, well, it's got power that it drew. It has power, enough power that I was drawn to it. What's cool about this particular thing that has been consistent with it is almost everybody that sees it sees the American Indian influence from a distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? When you look closer, here with the head and the circular top on top of the head, this is Horus, the sun god from Egypt.
Oh.
And what I think is really, and then you have the male and female power, kind of the yin and the yang down here that in the clutches of his claws. But what I've come to really realize is that it reminds me so much of how much similarity with indigenous roots that we all have in us. Most people, unbeknownst to themselves even, how much connection in the spiritual world with the ancients that there is, even between like the Americas and Egypt, which is Africa.
Right.
And even the Egypt that we know is really just the last stage of a much deeper, rich cultural heritage of Africa that we really all are connected to. And so it's come to have that kind of unity power for me, and it does feel it makes me feel more confident when I perform.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, we took photos here a couple days ago.
Yeah, I saw those. I saw one already that y'all been using. I love it, man.
Yeah, great. I'm glad.
Yeah.
During the photo shoot, and I didn't ask about it at the time, neither Jake and I both noticed it, but we didn't bring it up, was you had a coin that you pulled out.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any story or significance to that, or did you just have something
I've been holding on to that coin for two reasons. Number one, it's the coin is from 1984, which is a powerful year, I think, out there in the universe. And also, I don't know how somebody did it, but it has this like blue like, you know, like it has this blue background that somehow I think I've seen coins like this before where it looks like somebody did some kind of like, I don't know what they did, some kind of effect to get, you know, you like have George Washington's face on the quarter or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's all kind of popped up. And
Right.
then all the lower parts and grooves of the quarter are all that like this blue paint.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somebody did that intentionally. And I've had a few coins like that. So anytime I find one like that, I try to hold on to it. But
Nice.
of course, anything you try to hold on to, you eventually are going to lose.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm glad. I mean, see, like small things like that paint a really cool picture about who you are. I mean, all of this.
I love coins, man. I love change. I love to have like 2 or 3 coins in my hand and keep them rotating and stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's big. I really love it, you know.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I like keys.
Right. Keys, coins, small metal objects. Is that?
And blues, baby.
Keys, coins, and blues.
Keys, coins, and blues.
Well, thank you again for coming in and talking to me.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Absolutely.
Man, it's exciting. You know, I've done a few of these, but you know, each time is special. So
cool. Well,
thank you, man.
Thank you. I'm gonna say one more time to the people out there: March 26th, Charley Crockett at Cinderblock Sessions. We're gonna have a lot of fun.
Got Vincent Neil Emerson in the house with us. It's gonna be a blast, y'all.
Yeah. Last thing I'm gonna do is tack on one of your songs at the end of this, so people that haven't heard you can. What do you think from A Stolen Jewel? You like Trinity River, Cold Hearted Woman?
Trinity, I'd say, you know, give them Trinity River, man.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You know, that's the song that people all around town, I think, are the most connected to.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Thank you again, Charley Crockett. To the people out there, this is Trinity River.
Trinity River, such a dirty little river, but that don't bother me. Dirty little river gonna get me clean. The Trinity River, no, because I cry, gonna keep me honest when everybody telling lies. Damn scent of evening hung everywhere. Gamblers turn their cards and drinking on that whiskey hard. The damn scent of evening flows through my head. I had the sweetest dream. I was floating in the river dead. The Trinity River is such a dirty little river, but that don't bother me. Dirty little river gonna get me clean. The Trinity River flow because I cry. Gonna keep you honest, even when you're telling lies. In this river city, nothing ever lasts beside the lonesome blues, staring back at you. In this river city, one thing you can be sure: whatever you got to give, somebody gonna get some more. The Trinity River is such a dirty little river, but that don't bother me. Dirty little river gonna get me clean. The Trinity River flow because I cry. Gonna keep me honest, even though they telling lies. Trinity River, muddy water rising up. Trinity River, couldn't drown me fast enough. Trinity River, flow because I cry. Gonna keep you honest, even though you tell it lies.
Thanks again to Charley Crockett, man. It was a lot of fun. Folks, you guys got to come check out his session Saturday, March 26th. The dude's awesome. You'll see it when you're here. We'll see you here. Other things coming up. We've got Jonas Martin next month, April 30th. He'll be doing a Cinderblock session. Releases this week. We have an On the Block by Paul Demmer, and we also have another On the Block we're releasing from our friends at Moonlight Native with a song called Lightning. It's super cool. We're walking through Deep Ellum. You'll see the video. We'll post it. All right, guys. We'll see you Saturday. All right, later.